Welcome back to Razmafsar TV. I'm really happy to have here on our channel again, Dr. Lillian Nejad. Hi, Lillian. How are you?
Hi, lovely to be back.
Thank you very much for accepting our invitation to be back on our channel. We really appreciate it. Lillian, could you please introduce yourself? Who are you? What do you do?
Of course. I'm a clinical psychologist. I've had 25 years of experience working in a variety of settings, including public mental health services, universities, private practice, and with organizations as well as a consultant. I've spent a lot of time trying to fill the gaps, I think, for people in terms of the psychological strategies and resources available to them. So for that purpose, I've done a few projects and written a few books. I've done a podcast, and I developed some online digital courses to make psychological strategies more accessible to people. And I think I spoke about those the last time I was on your podcast, but since then, I've also created an app called Contain Your Brain, which helps people worry less. I think that along with anxiety comes worry. So most people don't know the strategies to assist them with their worry. So I've created, with a co-founder, a really practical, user-friendly app that's also free, that you can download for free, that assists people to manage their minds.
We are going to have like a PowerPoint slide we prepared so we can go through what you wonderful work you have done and have been doing. Important for me just in the beginning to ask, why do we worry? I mean, for me, it's also very important because I think, was it André Gide? I think it was him, yes, this French philosopher and writer who said, I only wish I haven't worried that much because nothing happened as much as I had worried before.
Yeah, that's so true.
So why do we worry?
Well, worry is basically our thoughts' expression of anxiety. And if you think about anxiety as, I mean, a lot of people think of anxiety in a really negative way. They think of it as a bad emotion. And it can be very uncomfortable and distressing, and that's why people don't like it. But we actually need to be anxious. That's like the way that we survive. So anxiety is there to signal threat so that we are able to prepare for the threat, plan for the threat, and protect ourselves. So if you think about worry, worry has a functional side too. Worry's there to detect threat, to say, oh, I'm worried about this thing coming. It's anticipating a problem coming up. And so it can be functional if that signal is accurate, if it's leading to appropriate problem solving and solutions and good decisions, then we worry for that reason. Worry is essentially like anticipating future problems. And, if it's working well, then we're solving those problems before they become problems. But the thing is, with anything that's functional can be dysfunctional as well. And so it's really dysfunctional worry that we want to do something about. And you alluded to something that's actually very true in the research. A lot of the research is actually showing that over 90% of what we worry about either never happens or solves itself, or if it does happen, it's not as bad as what you thought. So we have so much mental clutter in our minds with these types of worries. And I think that's why I think it's really it can be really helpful if you know and understand and use really simple psychological strategies to manage that, because what it's going to give you is a lot more time, right? If you're spending all of that time in your head, you don't have enough time to be in your life. So it's about understanding what are the worries that I can just let go of because they're the ones that I always have, that nothing ever happens, or they solve themselves. So they're not actually that big of a deal. I can just let those go. That's 90% gone. Um, and then I think that the other types of worries that people really get stuck on, because I think I like to categorize them. I like to categorize them as solvable or unsolvable, or solved, meaning they will be solved by the time you get to them. They're the 90%. Um, Solvable ones, I think most people are fairly comfortable with because you can do something about it. So they're not probably the ones that are as problematic, and they're probably the more functional ones. But the unsolvable ones are ones that we can get very caught up in. Like the worries, for instance, about things we have no control over, or the worries that of things that happened in the past.
Yeah.
Usually worries associated with future, and worries about the past is usually called rumination, but it's essentially worries, right? So if you've done something in the past, or you've just gone a lot, like this is really common for some of my clients, like you go to a social event and you say something, or you're having conversations, you're meeting new people, and a worrier will go home then and just analyze the heck out of the conversations, or worry about like, oh, was I boring? Or I shouldn't have said this, or I shouldn't have said that. Um, and if you're worried about when you're worried about something that's already happened, that can be a very unproductive, unhelpful thing to do. And then sometimes people will worry about something for years, and it's like something that happened 5 years ago, and it's still taking up
Yeah.
their minds. So those types of worries are really important to do something about as well. So yeah, basically we worry for a reason. It's a good reason if it's helpful, but often worrying is not helpful.
I have two questions. How do I distinguish if I'm worrying about something which is helpful and something which is not helpful?
Yeah, I think generally when worry leads to problem solving, and the solution makes sense and is healthy and appropriate, then it's functioning. It's functioning well. Right? If the worry never leads to problem solving, it's just something that goes on and on and on and on in your mind, um, or it's impacting you in a negative way, like it's taking your attention away from, let's say, focusing at work,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
being with your family, enjoying relaxation time. One of the things that it really gets in the way of for many people is sleep.
Yeah.
One of the things that is really so common, people say that have trouble falling asleep. And if you ask them, 9 out of 10 people will say it's because I can't stop thinking.
Yes.
As soon as their head hits the pillow, their brain lights up, because it's quiet and we don't have any distractions. And we haven't dealt with the worries during the day. So if they come to you right then with the most inconvenient time, and then you can't
Yeah.
sleep. Or some people, they fall asleep, but they wake up in the middle of the night with racing thoughts and worries about um, something that's, stressful for them in their lives. That might be work, or family, or their own, something going on for them personally. But nighttime isn't the best time to fall asleep. I mean, sorry, nighttime is the best time to fall asleep. Nighttime isn't the best time to worry. So one of the strategies that I teach as a psychologist to people who worry a lot and worry, and when worry is really impacting their lives significantly, is called worry time. Have you ever heard of that?
No.
So
Uh-huh.
worry time is a strategy that was developed in the early 80s by a group of researchers who were actually looking for ways to help people with worry that was causing insomnia, which is interesting.
Yeah.
But what they came up with was called worry time. So worry time is basically instead of letting yourself worry all day or worry at night, you set aside time to worry. So you actually make like an appointment with yourself. So the reason why that sounds too simple and, strange and um, but the reason why that works is because what we try to do when we worry is to try to stop worrying. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know if this is something that you've ever done, but when you're worrying and it's getting on your nerves and you're like, stop thinking about that,
Yes, I
a
do.
lot of people will do that.
I do that. Yeah.
But the research shows that when you try to stop your thoughts, um, it doesn't work, first of all, but actually it can lead to a rebound effect so that you actually end up worrying more about um, whatever you're thinking about rather than less. So it's counterproductive to try to stop thinking about your worries. But what they did find is if you postpone and delay thinking about your worries, that works much better. And so worry time is a way of doing that. Worry time is about setting a specific time and a specific place where you worry. So for instance, it might be 5:30, 5 to 5:30 in the evenings. And I'm going to set the place. I'll do it in my study, on a couch or a chair. You don't want to choose your bedroom because that's not a place you want to associate with worry.
Mm, yes.
And you want to keep it to maybe half an hour, 15 minutes is a good amount. Half an hour is not bad. You probably don't want to do it more than an hour, but for some people that might be necessary to start with. And then when you have worries during the day or at night, what you do is you write them down and you tell yourself, I will deal with you at 5 o'clock tonight, or if it's the next day, 5 o'clock tomorrow. Then when you get to your worry time, that's the time where you process your worries. Now, when they developed this in the 80s, the way that, because I've been a psychologist since the late 90s, so the way that you would teach it in the late 90s is very different to now, because what you would tell people to do is like have a worry box or worry jar, put it in their worry place, and then write on little pieces of paper or note cards whenever a worry comes up, put it in their worry jar in their worry place. And then you go there and you open the box and you process them, right?
Yes, right.
That worked in the 80s and 90s, but we don't live like that anymore, right? Privacy is really important to us. Everything's online. It's impractical to carry pieces of paper around.
Yes.
And that's really what the impetus was for the app that I developed, Contain Your Brain, because I was speaking to one of my clients about worry time and telling him how to do it. And he was actually a legal professional, and he was struggling with worry and anxiety. And I was explaining it to him. And as I was explaining the process, I could see his eyes glazing over because it was just so messy. And I'm like, it's a shame because, so I knew he wasn't going to do it because it was just impractical. And so I thought it's a shame that somebody won't try a strategy that works just because it's impractical and not user friendly anymore. And so I thought if we potentially made it easier,
Mm,
not just easier, but also more private,
mhm.
that people would actually use it and then get some relief from worry. So that's how the idea for Contain Your Brain came about. And it starts with worry time in terms of setting your time and place aside. But then when you're in your worry time, we actually help people address their worries. Exactly how I was just describing before. First, you categorize them. Is it something you can solve? Is it something that's unsolvable, or has it solved itself?
Mm.
And depending on which category you choose, you get strategies that match the worry, the type of worry that it is.
Lillian, I have a question. The choice for the verb contain, do I understand it
Mhm.
correctly? It's like you put them in a containment, like prison, you imprison the negative thoughts. Is it that's the way it is
Well, that's
meant?
really interesting you've chosen the word prison.
Excuse me, that contain them, right? Or do you mean restrict them? Or what in which sense do you use this verb
Yeah,
for?
that's a really interesting question. No one's ever asked me that. That's so interesting. I think it's more about putting a lid on it, like um, creating boundaries for
Okay,
your worries,
yeah,
right?
right.
So it's completely normal to have worries. So it's not about getting rid of worries or saying that they're bad,
Yeah,
but there's a time and a place,
okay. Yeah,
right? Just
yeah,
like there is for other things. Like when you're at work or when people are at work, um, there are meetings. And often these meetings are to focus on a problem. And we all go and, the people in the meeting and they go and they focus on the problem and they workshop it and they either come up with a solution or they decide there's no solution or they decide it's not a problem anymore, right? It's exactly the same kind of process, but it's for yourself and your own thoughts. So that's how I would view it. More like a meeting for yourself. Um, that has a very clear boundary
mm.
rather than like a prison where the bad thoughts go.
Very interesting. Let me just say something to you. It's very interesting because you say worry. I remember 3 weeks ago, I had a meeting, online meeting with a lawyer I knew. So we have been working a lot together. And then he
Mhm,
said he's going to invite another one. And he said his name. I just thought, okay, he's an international lawyer. And so
mhm.
during meeting, when we were online, he introduced him and about the background. Then I realized listen, this is you're going to laugh about it. Now I'm also online and they're going to listen to it. It's funny. And then I realized he's really a big shot internationally, an advisor to governments in Germany, not only here, but top notch everywhere, even it's
Yeah.
transatlantic. I mean, actually, a human being is a human being. Why would it even change? But
Mhm.
then I realized I started to worry, why hadn't I checked it before this meeting? I mean, it wouldn't have changed anything because I did
Right.
my job. He was asking me and I was answering. But during this whole process, it put a professional face, but it was really worrying at high speed.
Yeah.
My God, why hadn't you checked on him before? You normally do. Why took it him for granted? I mean, everything went well. But then I started to worry. You
Mhm.
understand? Because my slogan had been always check on people before you talk to
Yeah.
them. And why
Prepare.
didn't you? Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
And if I tell you for weeks I was worrying about this and nothing happened.
Weeks.
Yes. For
So what
weeks.
was that's so interesting. So even though you can rationally say that everything went well,
Yes.
you kept worrying about it.
Yes. Yes. I kept worrying about it. And today when I look back at it and I said, why was I worrying so much about
Mhm.
this?
Yeah.
And that's very interesting because okay, I didn't know on any of the strategies you just explained, and the
Yeah.
whole time I was thinking about it. And now when
Mhm.
I look back at it, what would it have even changed rationally? But
Right.
rationalization didn't help me, Lillian. You know
Yes. And
what I mean?
sometimes it doesn't. Yeah, sometimes it doesn't. You know that sometimes like I often think about different two different pathways for strategies for anxiety. So one is the change pathway, which is what most people feel comfortable with,
Yes.
which is like changing your thoughts, for instance, like, and that's what you're saying, rationalization, like be more logical, be more rational. Sometimes that works really well, challenging your own thoughts and then changing it to a new one, and that can be really relieving for a lot of people, but for some people it isn't. And I'd say the other pathway that can be um, just as, if not more effective, is called what I call the acceptance pathway. And that's really about accepting the reality of the situation, right? And in a non-judgmental way. And often just, I mean, part of that is you can't do anything about it now,
No.
right?
No.
The situation's done.
Yes.
So accepting that it's done can lead to you feeling less judgmental about yourself, because I feel like that's part of it. You're like, why didn't I should have prepared before. I should have known more
Yes.
about this person before I met. Like shoulds are always judgmental, right? That's you
Mm.
judging yourself. So
Yes.
it's not really even about, part of it was anxiety, but part of it was like guilt,
Guilt. Yes.
or yeah, maybe shame. I don't know. Something along those lines that was keeping that rumination going in your mind. Um, and I think sometimes we're judge our judgmentalness is what keeps anxiety going. It keeps us in distress. And if we can just recognize that and then not judge ourselves for being anxious, not judge ourselves for not researching, just saying, this is actually what happened. This is how I felt about what happened. This is how I would do it if I could do it differently. But I have to, I accept that I can't actually change it and there's nothing I can do about that. And that's really like the strategies for unsolvable worries are the ones that are the most difficult. Like what you're describing is something that's unsolvable. It's already happened.
Yes.
So your tasks will be, in terms of dealing with it, are not to solve it again,
Mhm.
right? Because you can't
Yes.
do that. You can plan for the future, right? But but really what it is to manage your own distress about it.
Yes.
And that really often comes down to acceptance. And
Yes.
acceptance is one of the hardest
Yes. It
skills,
is.
actually.
It
So
is. Mm.
it does take a lot of practice. And
Mm.
I think we've talked about mindfulness before, but that's really what the point of mindfulness is to help people accept reality and their experiences without judgment.
Ah, did I understand you correctly? Mindfulness. Okay. Is it because we suffer because we cannot solve it, and but we still, instead of accepting it, we think we could have or we should have solved it?
Mhm.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, or we continue to try to solve something that's
Oh,
unsolvable.
we continue.
Yeah,
Of course, which cannot be done. Of course. How?
yeah, yes. And sometimes I think that dysfunctional purpose of worry is, I think people tend to ruminate or worry a lot because they think it's going to be helpful in some way, that it will eventually lead to some resolution or solution. But it often won't, because you're if it's an unsolvable thing, then it won't lead to anything. It just leads to distress.
That's right.
And that can be in the form of anxiety and guilt and shame and anger and frustration and, a whole range of emotions that make everything bigger and worse rather than better.
Of course. Lillian, could you, before we go to our slides, just for our viewers, describe anxiety? How would you, as a trained psychologist, describe anxiety? What kind of feeling is that in
Well,
psychological terms?
psychologically, it's basically a physiological response to threat.
Oh,
That's really what it is. Yeah.
yes.
Um, it it's not only physiological, it has a number of components.
Mm.
People experience anxiety physically, but they also experience it cognitively, like we were talking about with worry. That's a cognitive experience. Emotionally, it can be
Yeah.
wrapped up with more than just anxious feelings,
Yes.
and behaviorally as well, because so the physiological response leads to the behaviors that will help protect us, which are essentially the fight or flight response. I'm sure you've heard of that before. Freeze is often in
Yes.
there, but fight or flight are the most common, and really flight is the most common. So generally, most people will respond by either avoiding
Mhm.
or running away.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right. That's
And so, like, like I was describing with worry, that anxiety is a functional response. It's not negative, but anything functional can be dysfunctional, right? So if
right.
it's functioning well,
Mhm.
then it's signaling a real threat
Mhm.
in the environment. It's communicating to us that we're in distress and need support of some kind.
Mhm.
It's helping our bodies prepare to fight or flee, and it's motivating us to take effective actions. That's functional. Dysfunctional, very common. Um, like if it's signaling a threat that doesn't actually exist.
Mhm.
So if you think about like phobias that people
Yes.
have,
Yes.
um, a lot of things that people have phobias of are not actually threatening. They're not going to kill you, but they still set off that threat response. Um, you know, heights, public speaking, those are really common. Certain animals.
Yes.
Um, so that's one. Dysfunctional anxiety is also when like it lasts too long or it happens too often or the intensity of the anxiety response is too significant. And when it has a negative impact on your life, that might be on your physical health, on your mental health, on your work, on your relationships. Um, and it's also when it motivates you to do something that actually isn't healthy. So
That's right.
when you protect yourself in ways that ultimately are maladaptive, like isolating yourself, for instance,
Yes.
avoiding everything that makes you uncomfortable, for instance,
Yes.
using substances to deal with anxiety all the time. Um, and also, anxiety can lead to other problems like depression and insomnia and, a whole range of things. So there's a lot of ways that it can be dysfunctional, but that's the difference, really.
Thank you very much. And we are going to talk about contain your brain. It's very, very interesting, fascinating what you're mentioning here to us. I'm just going to share something which we have prepared for our viewers about your work. And so we are going to have it. So Lillian has a very beautiful website. And so if you guys want to go there, you can go and check. Of course, I'm going to put the link here in the descriptions. So Lillian already introduced herself. Lillian, tell us about your mission. Here you talk about your mission and access to quality mental health. Mental health is now part of CSR, corporate social responsibility. Many companies, many of my clients talk about mental health, but I think many of them don't even know because they're not professionals as
Yeah.
part of corporate social responsibility. Could you just describe quality mental health for us? What should we do?
Yeah, that's really quality for me means that it's science backed, it's evidence based, it's according to best practice, it's factual. Um, I think that at the moment there's been a proliferation of mental health and well-being information out there. And some of it's quality, but the overwhelming majority is questionable. So, so And look, some of it's still helpful. Like there's a lot of really great stuff in terms of people being open about their lived experience and the things that help them and the strategies that help them. And I think that that's really helpful. When it becomes unhelpful is when people say, I've done this. Now I know the formula for success. And if you do it like I did it, it will work for you too.
I heard that, yeah.
That's not quality mental health information. That's could be helpful, but when it's presented as there's one formula to relieve stress or one formula to relieve anxiety or any mental health issue, um, that's not telling the truth. And
Mm.
if people are saying that they're guaranteeing a life transformation, that's not actually true. Um, and a lot of people are presenting themselves as having expertise in areas that isn't really, qualified at all. So I think that I think it's really helpful if people are just aware of some of the tactics that are used in marketing kind of mental health and well-being um, programs and products and services so that they can look at it with a critical eye and ensure that they're receiving good quality information and services. And so the things that I guess I would look for is um, science backed
Mm.
claims. But again, people make claims that are apparently science backed and they'll put a reference. But if you look at the reference off, like sometimes it's based on 30 people, doing a research study. You can't generalize from something like that. So it can be really difficult for the layperson to really be able to distinguish between what's quality and what isn't. And I guess that's part of my mission is to be like a trusted source.
Yes.
So I'm not the only one. Obviously, there's many people that you can trust to relay this information. But I feel like that's part of what I want to do is make psychological strategies more accessible to the public so that you don't have to be in a psychologist's office to get it,
Mm.
and to ensure that the information is good quality. And that it's based on rigorous research, not just one study or even a few studies with a few people, that it's, reputable, rigorous, randomized control studies. And I guess part of it is because of the work that I've done over the years and with multiple issues with many people in many settings, I guess I have that basis of 25 years of experience in term, and it gives me a really, I guess, broad view of um, the things that work and also that knowing, being in this industry for so long, even the best gold standard treatments for any mental health disorder, but let's say anxiety, they still don't help everybody, right?
Yes.
So it's CBT, for instance, cognitive behavioral therapy is considered a gold standard treatment for anxiety and other problems as well, like depression and eating disorders, whole range, insomnia, a whole range of things. But the research shows that it's effective for around 70% of people, right? So that means that there's 30% that need something else potentially. So for me, that means that I'm developing my knowledge in more than just CBT so that I've got other pathways that I can assist people. CBT is a very change pathway oriented therapy and treatment, and it works for, like I said, the majority of people. But the acceptance pathway treatments like acceptance and commitment therapy or a dialectical behavior therapy, which includes cognitive behavioral therapy, um, parts of those things in both of those, um, can be another pathway that people might get help with. But so there isn't ever going to be one formula or one way of helping someone. And maybe a lot of people who are out there trying to help people, they're doing it in good faith, but they don't realize that what they're selling isn't really that ethical.
No, no,
So
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. So that's really what it is for me. Is the mission is accessibility, evidence-based, and ethical.
We go to the next one, please. And helping business professionals worry less. We talked about it, and this is,
Mhm.
I mean, you explained it very well. Worrying, I think, if I look around my clients, how many of them, also at university, my students, many of them worry about the
Yes.
exam. Everyone is worrying. Professionals are worrying, students are worrying, everyone is
Hmm.
worrying. But you
Yeah,
explained
that's
it
right.
why we worry or not.
Yeah.
Is
Well,
it be- Go
sorry, go
ahead,
ahead.
please. I just want to ask, is it because we human beings in the course of evolution, because we are weak compared to other predators that we worry so much, or it has nothing to do with that?
Well, I guess I wouldn't term it as weak. I think that I guess we've got a lot more going on cognitively than other living things on the earth. But we also live in a more, because of that, we live in a more complex life.
Yes.
And, anxiety has really skyrocketed over the last 5 years. And along with that, worry. Um, and one of the most common worry disorders is called generalized anxiety disorder. And that affects 4% of people worldwide. So that's like over 300 million people. Um, and worry is also a really major component of other anxiety disorders and psychological conditions like depression and insomnia and burnout and a whole range of other things. But we are as a society more anxious. And that comes down to, I think, a whole range of things. I think, um, like I said, the complexity of society, the pace of society. I think our expectations for our lives might be different now because we're exposed to everybody else's life now. Like, like we can be via social media. The way that we communicate and gather together is really different than before. So maybe we're not getting as much of the social and relationship um, exposure that we really need to keep us resilient and build resilience. I mean, if you look at the resilience research, the number one factor in building resilience is close, supportive relationships.
Yes.
So if we're spending less time with people and more time online or by ourselves, or even working on our own, a lot of people are doing that now,
Yeah, I love.
um, then we are probably going to be less resilient. And if we're less resilient, then we aren't going to be able to cope as well with the stressors in our lives. And then when feel like we're not coping, then we feel anxious because that's very threatening to feel like you're not coping. And then we
True.
worry We worry about ourselves. We worry about our health. We worry about our jobs. We worry about money. Worry about our relationships, about our children, about, whether we're going to be on time, whether this podcast is going well. Like there's so many things to worry about, right?
Yes.
Right. And that's just like, those are just kind of the run of the mill ones too, right? We're all going to worry about those things sometimes. And then sometimes we have extra things on our plate that we have to worry about as well on top of it. So I think it's kind of understandable why, and we had the whole weird situation that no one's ever in our lifetime dealt with the pandemic, which changed our lives. And we probably still have the aftermath of that, you know, you know, we're still flinching when someone sneezes or coughs.
Yes,
Like so,
we
right?
do.
So it's still there. It's
It
still
is.
there. It's still impacting us.
Yes.
So yeah, I think it's more now than ever, but it's always been really important to um, have tools and skills and strategies to face the ups and downs of life because they're always going to be there. And yeah, and like you said, in particular to worry, but I think anxiety as well. But when we talk about contain your brain, it really, it's like everyone worries, and that's so true. But there are maybe pockets of people who worry more.
Yeah.
Um, University students is a great example, I
Oh,
think.
yeah.
There are certain industries um, where professionals may have more mental health issues because of just the way that their industry is. I think you mentioned legal professionals
They
before.
are.
They
Yes.
they certainly have higher levels
Yes.
of
They do.
anxiety. There's a lot of pressure and stress in the work that legal
Yes.
professionals do. But like they're not the only industry I mean, the finance, banking, hospitality, construction. Um, they're all industries that have a lot of anxiety and other issues like substance use and depression and burnout and, a whole range of things. So, yeah, so we certainly need some of these tools and strategies, quality ones, um, in schools, in universities, in workplaces, as well as just in our own home.
If we move on, coping with anxiety, right? You already gave us lots of information, which I really was very, very helpful, especially, when you think overthinking, worrying, ruminating. That's very interesting. You might explain it
Mhm,
already,
mhm.
right? Yeah, and I can really say that feeling like you're going around in circles is right, with no relief inside. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. It's just like it's like a very unpleasant merry-go-round in your mind.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah, I think, for me, the the pathway to managing anxiety is to understand what
Mhm.
the function of it is, and to
Yep.
be able to tell when it's functional and when it's not, and not look at it as good or bad. It's not good or bad. Right?
Yes.
All our emotions are there for a reason. Um, we've evolved for them to be there. And anxiety, especially, is important for our survival. So it's not bad, but it can function, in a way that's not helping you as well. So one is understanding it. I think the second thing is to accept it in our lives,
Yes. Mm.
rather than judging it
Yes.
and trying to push it away,
Yes.
because acceptance means we stop struggling against it, right? You're talking about suffering. Like, yeah, if you struggle against it, you're going to suffer more. But if you accept it, then you still may have the pain of it, the distress of it, but it's not going to get bigger. And if you're validating yourself and understanding, like, okay, I'm feeling anxious. Well, it's reasonable for me to feel this way because I have to do a public speech tomorrow and I'm That's an anxiety provoking thing, but I would rather not feel anxious, but it makes sense for me to be anxious. That's a
Yes.
much better way of dealing with it than, oh my God, I'm feeling anxious. I'm not going to be able to cope. Oh my, I shouldn't feel anxious. I've done this a million times. Like, why am I like doing this? Like, and then you're starting to get frustrated with yourself. And then you've got anxiety and now you've got frustration on top of it. You've just made the problem bigger,
Bigger. Yes. Bigger.
right? So
Definitely.
just keep it at anxiety. If you keep it at anxiety and accept anxiety non-judgmentally, you've already helped yourself a little bit.
Absolutely.
And so it's understanding it, then accepting it, and
Yes.
then you can do things to change, right? So there's lots of things you can do to change anxiety at the physical level, the cognitive level, the behavioral level. We've talked about the cognitive level with worry. There's lots of other cognitive tools as well. Um, but you, a lot of times it's helpful to start at the physical level because sometimes an anxiety response can get so big, so intense that it actually shuts down the part of our brain that's able to think through things clearly and make good decisions. So this part at the front shuts down. And so to get that back online, it can be really helpful to do things like relaxation exercises or mindfulness techniques to reduce our level of distress so we can re-engage that part of our mind. Um, and that's, one of the first things that I usually recommend to my clients. And it's something that this program, Coping with Anxiety in Challenging Times, includes those kinds of activities and strategies. And then like behaviors are things like reducing your vulnerability to anxiety
Yeah.
through, the healthy lifestyle thing that we all know about, but we all don't do.
Yeah.
Like, so like nutrition, physical activity, sleep, social interaction, and like
Yes.
relaxation and fun, let's say, are like the five that we need to be looking after ourselves in those ways on a consistent basis. And they're pretty basic. And I know that everyone knows those things, but I think most people are lagging in at least one of those areas.
Yes. Most. Most.
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you have an area that you lag in?
Yes, I admit that social interactions because I keep moving a
Really?
lot. Yes.
What about relaxation? Are you not relaxing enough?
Not no, I'm not. I need to admit that because the thing, I mean, it depends what you call relaxations. Because if I don't teach at university, if I don't work for my clients, then I use the time to write academic articles, and then I
Mhm,
think I look at it as like relaxation. But
mhm.
some people challenged me and they said this is not certainly not relaxation if you try to write an academic article. Uh, well,
Well, you know what? I would challenge that a little bit because everyone's version of relaxation is different. But what I would say to you is maybe having more options than that. Like, right? So
yes, of
so
course.
that your relaxation isn't always work related. Um, and yeah, I mean, everyone's different. I think I always say you have to try many different stress management and relaxation techniques to
Mhm.
find the ones that work for you.
Yes.
And that's what I try to do in my programs is introduce a number of different strategies and skills. Not to say if you do all of these, you will be stress-free and anxiety-free. That's not the message. The message is you won't ever be stress-free or anxiety-free, but you'll actually be able to manage it a lot better and it won't distress you as much. But you need to find the ones that work for you, the tools that work for you. Because my set of tools are not going to be your set of tools. I'm certainly not going to, write a publication for my relaxation. Right? But if it's relaxing for you, I mean,
Yeah.
I don't see anything. wrong with that being on your list, but I think it should just be one of many things on your list.
I mean, I tried the relaxation methods with one of my friends. So what he does here in Frankfurt, Germany, what he does, also when I was in the States, because he goes for work there, anytime I'm with him, his method of relaxation, he goes and sits and, okay, eating out is good. Then he goes and sits in different like bars and drinks and talks. And I
Uh-huh.
get bored after like 30 minutes because I say, okay, we
Uh-huh.
have talked enough. I mean, what are we doing? Let's get out of here. But he can sit there, excuse
Yeah.
me, for like hours, right?
Yeah.
And talking and drinking, which is good. It's a way of relaxation. But the way I look at it, and I just told him, and he realizes that I get impatient after a while because I feel like we are not reaching anything. And he said,
Mm.
"Why do you think we should always reach something?" I think, yeah,
Uh-huh.
we have been sitting here for 4 hours, and we're talking like in circles. Yeah, that's what he loves, right? That's his way. I mean, he works a lot during the day, but but to me, Lillian, when I look at it, I say, I lost 4 hours, and it is 4 hours. Okay, maybe I could have gone out 1 hour. 3 hours, I could have been writing something. You understand?
Yes.
That's the way I look at
Oh,
it. Oh, I could have written more pages. But then he looks at me, he knows me. Right? I say, what the hell is that? Why do you always want to write? I say, I don't know. I just keep writing. So I think that's one major difference. For example, then to be honest with you, I'm not a psychologist, so judge that. But the way I look at that, when he challenges me like that, I say, am I being something like weird that I just want to write all the time? You understand? And then
well, I mean,
you know,
I think everyone is weird in some ways, and I don't think
yeah,
there's anything wrong with that. But what I'd say is like his version doesn't have to be your version.
yeah,
Like you enjoyed that for 30 minutes, maybe an hour.
yeah,
And some people are more extroverted and they get their energy from being around and socializing with people, and other people are more introverted and get their energy from being with themselves
yes,
and their own thoughts. And you might be that kind of person, but I would still challenge you on finding other ways besides writing to relax.
yeah,
And
okay,
it is okay to take extended periods of time away from writing. And
yes,
I think it can be what I would be wanting you to be aware of is that when, I don't know, you don't feel stressed when you write, but often people will feel stressed when they're working a
mhm,
lot. And if you don't have enough recovery time from that, then you can burn out. And you can
yes,
burn out from things that you love too. Like it's not just, people think about burnout as, being in a terrible working environment and they don't like their jobs and so that's why they get burned out. But sometimes it comes from overworking because you love and you're really passionate about what you do, but then you're just doing that all the time and you have nothing, like you don't have that turn off switch or
okay.
that downtime, that free time where you're not having to focus on that at all. But like I said, everyone's different. So the way that you would do that would be really different to how I would do that, to how your friend would do that.
Mm.
And it's just about striking the right balance for you.
Very interesting. Yeah,
Mm.
I learned something very interesting because I always used to think you only get burned out or you burn out when you do something you don't like. But good that you
Mm.
told me you also can get burned out by doing something you love. That's very important to know for me, at
Mm.
least. That's very important.
Yeah.
Yeah, very.
Yeah. I think that that's